नमस्ते ज्योतिरंजन सर।
नमस्ते जी, नमस्ते. Are you Professor Chitalkar?
Yeah.
I could recognize from your voice.
मनमोहन समंतरे किधर है?
Must be there. The busy person must be there. Let him have 1 hour back.
Right. This is for only faculty members, sir, or we have students also over here?
Students will also be joining our faculty and also faculty of the local institutions, and also elsewhere outsiders are also there. I see a lot of outsiders also.
Sir, namaste, Professor Shambhu Prasad sir.
Namaste, Chetan.
हम इरमा में मिले.
Yes, absolutely.
कैसे है सर?
Fine.
तो हितेश भट्ट सर कैसे है?
He's fine. I think he's got over.
Okay. तो लॉकडाउन के बाद फिर आना नहीं हुआ सर?
हाँ. It has affected most things in life.
Yeah. So actually, we were planning to come there and conduct an industry academia meet with
Yes.
association of IRMA instead. तो मेरा भी alumni है सर वो.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was nice meeting you.
With permission of panelists, Professor Shambhu Prasad sir and Chitalkar sir and Partha Pratim sir, and all the participants, I think we should start.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Please start, sir.
Okay. So very good afternoon to the panelist speakers for this 29th webinar on professional management and skill support for the rural economy, the way forward, hosted by our ASBM University, Bhubaneswar. Good afternoon to all the participants. I am Professor Jyotiranjan Mohanty, Dean, ASBM School of Business. Welcome you all. We have with us 3 distinguished speakers with expertise and rich experience in their own domain. We have Professor Dr. C. Shambhu Prasad, Professor Strategic Management and Social Sciences, Institute of Rural Management, Anand. Then we have Professor Dr. Chetan Chitalkar. He is the Director of Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education, MGNCRE, Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education, Government of India, Hyderabad. And our third speaker is Entrepreneurship Development and Financial Inclusion, National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayat Raj, Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India, Hyderabad. I welcome you all once again to this webinar. Now, just a request, participants are requested to keep their audio and video in mute, just for noise avoidance sake. They can put their question and answer in the chat box. Now just a few introductory lines regarding this theme topic of today: professional management and skill support for the rural economy, the way forward. Now, as we all know, India aims to become a 5 trillion economy in the next 5 years, and to power the growth of overall economy, we need to power rural India, says Professor Hitesh Bhatt. Then we have Harish Manwani, ex-chairman of the Hindustan Unilever. He once wrote, and I quote, "Rural India is a powerhouse with a potential to add $1.8 trillion to a country's economy. But this potential can only be realized if Bharat, that is rural India, and India, the urban India, merge. India, but the country is not producing enough managers to manage it. Business schools producing professional managers in India aim to cater to the corporate sector, which mainly serves urban market, which is nearly 16% of the population approximately. To make an impact for the 74 underserved, it is suggested that India need a change in the educational pattern and system that combines a thorough understanding of the rural and urban underserved segments with a professional management input. India has more than 5,500 management schools that produces around 4.5 lakhs graduates every year. But the country has less than 30 niche management schools focusing on rural sector. Rural management schools produce around 4,500 quality rural managers. I repeat, quality rural managers. According to a report by Deloitte and FICCI in the year 2018, the rural markets of FMCG goods alone will cross $100 billion by the year 2025. Rural households contribute 40% of the FMCG sales, 50% of the two-wheeler sales, and 30% of four-wheeler, and 45% of the telecom contribution. So huge is the contribution of the rural sector. Now, Amul, the epitome of successful homegrown brand that originated from rural India, was initiated by late Verghese Kurian over 60 years ago. Dr. Kurian believed the defining factor was the application of professional management to an underserved sector that needed it the most. Dr. Kurian brought the necessary professional management to the movement by facilitating a robust supply chain, creation of a modern technology and production system, and establishing a market. The most important is establishing a marketing and organizational ecosystem. Amul has provided proof of the concept of professionally managed rural institutions as a way of addressing the rural problems. Of course, this model is replicated in some other cases also, but the heart of the issue remains the dearth of the specialized institutes and professionals. Now, to share their thoughts, we have with our distinguished panelists with their own expertise and experiences. So, without wasting more time, I'd like to invite Dr. C. Sambhu Prasad from Institute of Rural Management, Annam, to please share his thoughts. Dr. Sambhu Prasad, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohanty. Abu Bakar, I hope I'm audible. I think you've been facing some quality issues on the audio side. It's a pleasure to have participants from Bangladesh and possibly from Africa as well. Though I think we will be spending more time on the Indian context. Professor Mohanty, I hope I am clear.
And yes, sir. Please,
yeah.
Go on.
Thank you very much, Professor Mohanty, for setting the context and also remembering Verghese Kurian. We have just started the centenary celebration of Dr. Kurian in the campus, and we hope to, in this year, also, take up some of the concerns that you have possibly raised in your introductory remarks. This is the end of a year that has been extremely chaotic and unthinkable. As we end this year and possibly as we herald the new year, we should be looking at something much better. Hopefully the worst is over and behind us. And in some sense, all the projections that we have talked about in the past might have to have a complete kind of rethink. So I would like to start my beginning observations by trying to talk about some of the goals that we had set ourselves probably a few years back. The first quarter growth in this year has been negative 23.9%, and it has only been agriculture in both the quarters that has maintained its growth rate of 3.4%. And I think we need to appreciate that in some sense, the model of growth that we have pursued has been affecting a very small percentage of the population and based on their income and expenditure patterns. So we had what was considered, maybe in the second quarter, there's a slight revival of manufacturing, which is 0.6% and so on. But I think in the only silver lining in this story has been the persistence of agriculture and its important contribution to the Indian economy. That has made more clear the discussions and deliberations of farm bills that have been, the center of protest in the borders of Delhi. The broad point one would like to understand as we move ahead is that in 2021, we are now seeing a situation where we moved from a high growth, but what was considered a jobless growth, to a slow growth, and now possibly COVID affected growth. And amidst all this, the importance of employment cannot be underemphasized. The sheer numbers of people who migrated in what was considered the misery of May, estimated at nearly 1 crore of people moving back to their homes from distant parts, Odisha not excluded, I think showed the very tenuous nature of our particular growth model. These migrants were not provided any kind of opportunity to reach their places in good time, and it kind of reflects a society which one would think is particularly worrisome. So this has been categorized as what we call the gated republic. So as we move ahead and plan for a post-COVID future, we should ask ourselves these questions on what is it that makes our society welcome Pravasi Bharats from abroad, but not willing to provide a proper, decent passage for the migrants who wanted to go to their own homes and be with their loved ones. The same issue, you and I are now talking in a digital platform, which has been more or less out of bounds for most of Indians across the country. The longer the pandemic persists, I think this opportunity is going to be removed from many of us. Just to give you an example, a recent study in the city of Ahmedabad, in a state which is prosperous called Gujarat, by the Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad and Professor Ankur Sarin and his team, had actually pointed out that all the government schools were not supplying midday meals to the children during this pandemic. And it has now taken a High Court order for the government to actually work around. So not only is the fact that many Indians are not receiving education, they're also not receiving the kind of nutrition. I will later talk about the importance of local institutions if the future of India and possibly the rest of the world has to be looked into. So I think the employment pattern at the turn of 2020-21, we have to notice that it is not only inadequate, it is insecure and in many cases indecent as well. Of the 41 crore Indians who work and with an unemployment rate of 8.7% as per the CMIE, an estimate 3.5 crore Indians have been berozgar or unemployed seeking work. So there is a growth challenge, there is also an employment challenge, and also there is a welfare challenge. And I think if we do not have what I would consider a livelihoods perspective, which brings growth, employment, and welfare together, we would probably not be able to meet the challenges that we are talking of. An estimate is that was made recently by Professor Dr. Vijay Mahajan in the State of India's Livelihoods report that is to be released soon, indicates that we need to create 10 crore new livelihoods in the 2021-30 decade to ensure full employment by 2030. So when we speak of the 5 trillion economy, we have to appreciate that along with this, we may have high growth but no employment, and we may have employment with great level of inequality. And I think those elements need to now come to the forefront so that all Indians, not just a few of us, are able to benefit from development. So while the rural has actually shown a sign of hope and can continue to show a sign of hope, we also need to appreciate that the rural is not just agriculture. And I think a greatest challenge as we move ahead is whether we can spend more in understanding and instituting what is considered the rural non-farm economy. This might be the key of the future revival post-COVID. 20% of the micro, small, and medium enterprises are based out of rural areas. So can COVID, the first point I'd like to suggest is that COVID has almost been a reset button. We need to rethink our development models, and then we can go into the details of how do we look at, going about doing this. So I would think that the COVID pandemic, after the recovery and so on, probably needs to look at a rural revival. It is not a great model where we have more and more people whose lives and livelihoods have to be saved in crowded localities like Dharavi and other places. The rural areas have been relatively free from some of these issues. So just to give you an example, our smart cities, we now realize, are not so smart after all. We've invested quite a bit on them. Only 1.18% of the 5,800 odd projects okayed since 2015 are for augmenting infrastructure and capability in health. And health is going to become more important as we go along, even if the migrants were to come back in the same numbers. So is the COVID-19 a wake-up call for what I would call a new postmodern world? I think some have been suggesting that it is possibly time to remember and recollect the work of Mahatma Gandhi, who had articulated an alternate vision for development in his famous manifesto of 1909 called Hind Swaraj. Incidentally, we've had an opportunity to revisit India's science and technology policy on similar lines, and I'm happy to share with our friends in Africa that a similar effort was done in trying to see how there could be an African manifesto on looking at the contribution of science and technology for development with people at the center of it. So since then, of course, India has become more urban, and in some sense, the 1909 manifesto was a call away from the mesmerization of modernity to a concerted action program based on constructive work. I would not like to go into details of it, and we could probably discuss much more when we have a bit of a discussion and after the remaining speakers have also shared their views. But however, I think the single most important aspect of COVID, which we need to look at as we move ahead, is the need to reimagine local institutions. Amidst the overall gloom of what was happening in the health sector, it is actually the under-recognized role of local institutions to rise to the challenge that holds the hope as we are seeking to rebuild rural livelihoods. This includes the thousands and lakhs of ASHA workers, the Panchayati Raj officials, the self-help groups, and farmer collectives who have been actually the uncelebrated corona warriors. Can we continue to have a re-emphasis on these local institutions as we plan our future? For the pandemic has reiterated that health, education, and rural livelihoods are far too important to be left only to the market forces. I think what we are trying to see is probably the end or probably the limits of what I would consider the excessive centralization of production in global supply chains that has made many consumers unthinkingly opt for temporal convenience, masking the violence and ecological and social costs of the goods that we consume. When Gandhi suggested that you have to be rural minded before you can be non-violent, he was suggesting a search for models for the future that would go beyond the possibly necessary but insufficient Swadeshi in today's parlance of, say, boycotting Chinese goods to real Swaraj, emphasizing the empowerment of producers and the collectives. What we need today is a new Make in Rural India movement. So it's not just Make in India, but Make in Rural India. These livelihoods that are going to be created need to be in second rung and below cities at the district headquarters and maybe smaller towns. We need to think of district level employment plans and something in which I think the students of ASBM and many other management schools need to work at that level, not just for the urban markets, but at different kinds of smaller kinds of aggregation clusters and so on. Many of these livelihoods will have to be in the non-farm sector, even as agriculture continues to play an important role. And this would include agro-processing, crafts, micro enterprises in manufacturing, housing and small infrastructure construction, proximate services such as retail, trade, storage, transport, financial and real estate services, as well as social services such as health and education. So beyond, finally, I'd like to suggest that, and I'd like to conclude with this point, that while entrepreneurship is going to become more and more important, skilling people also relating to entrepreneurship. So if we need to move from livelihoods to entrepreneurship through skilling, uh, it is more important for us to look at startups beyond a very, very narrow segment of these amazing but very few unicorns and in the fintech and other kinds of sector, to a much greater and broader set which focus on incubating rural, social, and collective enterprises. At IRMA's incubator, which I had a chance to lead in the last 4 years, I'm not actively involved with it right now. I think what we realize in India today is a huge capacity deficit. And unless we invest in people, processes, and institutions, we may not be able to try and make the shift that we're talking of in terms of professional management and skill support for the rural economy. So to end, I would say that the COVID has presented as an opportunity to reinvent local production and consumption, which can be mediated through technology and other kinds of processes. There's going to be a greater demand for safer food and so on. But I think it is also an opportunity through COVID for a post-COVID revival to look at the model of growth that is sustainable, equitable, and just. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dr. C. Sambhu Prasad, sir. You have rightly taken us through a very macro view of the entire rural economy's revival post-COVID. It was indeed very informative, and you have touched so many areas which are very integral part of a total package what is necessary. And rightly you have said, make in rural India should be the move rather than make in India. Okay, and then the areas of concern that you have raised are really very, very extreme. Intention is to move ahead. Thank you, Professor Sambhu Prasad, for all your deliberations. And and then now I request Professor Chetan Chitalkar, MG and CRE, to please share his thoughts and suggestions. He has been working, pushing in many institutions towards adopting rural education and rural management programs. So I would request Professor Chetan Chitalkar to please share his views. Professor Chitalkar.
Namaste. Thank you, Professor Jyotiranjan sir. Thank you, Professor C. Shambhu Prasad sir, IRMA. Thank you, Professor Partha Pratim Sahu from National Institute of Rural Development in Panchayat Raj. So, sir was rightly telling about the problems and prospects in this COVID-19 situation. I remember our words from Professor Krishnamurthy, who used to share his thoughts in project management and advanced project management. So I remember two things that were used in his classes. One is a natural disaster that takes place and suddenly from nowhere a hand comes in front of you and says that you stop and start suffering. There is no end for the suffering because you have done the mistake, the hiding hand principle. And further to that, apart from the natural disaster that has happened, has made all of us to suffer. There is a bamboo flower that has blossomed. From nowhere, we don't know when it gets blossomed, and it may be once in a 40 years or 50 years, we don't know, but it certainly blossoms. And when it comes out, it says that you enjoy all whatever that is around you because it's glorified. So you feel as though you are in heaven and everything is there for your benefit. So these two principles I could remember in this COVID-19 situation. We have suffered a lot and suffering is still continuing. In the meanwhile, we have arrived at a solution And further to that, we are going to prosper. So that is the um, objective vision. With that in my mind, I proceed further in continuation with Sir. So, if you see the logo of Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education, it says, where there is rural well-being, there is universal prosperity. So, where there is a rural well-being, there is universal prosperity. So, our visionary chairman, Dr. W.G. Prasanna sir, realized this cause in 2017 only, and had developed a curriculum for rural management, both for undergraduate and postgraduate program. So what we are trying to do to see that we should call ourselves as professionals. First, I'll try to stick on to the title that has been given by Sir. Uh, Professional management, the skill support, to see that the professional management really happens. So the meaning of professional management and the skill support that is needed to continue the professional support, and especially focusing on the rural economy. If you see these things and the situation that is around us now, what we need is to support the youth, or as per the words of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Azad, I quote his words, he wanted to empower the youth, and these youth will become the employment generators. This was his idea in 2005. Now it is 2020. So added to his vision, he also came out with one more idea, telling that we have to push the idea of entrepreneurship in higher education institutes. So what this pushing of entrepreneurship is, to see that the faculty members who are in the profession of teaching, sharing their knowledge, facilitating the students, will have experiential learning, and through that sharing of experiential learning, they'll create entrepreneurs. So how could it be done? So further to that, Abdul Kalam Azad, I'm just trying to quote himself because we have less time with us, and we need to see that the whole discussion on this subject that has been given to us, professional management, skill support, rural economy, and the way forward. I am trying to see that in a nutshell, I'll be able to tell you what is the need of the hour and how it can be fulfilled with the help of higher education institute. So when I first met Manumata Samantre and the other board of directors in the roundtable meeting, it was my first visit to ASBM, and again it was a virtual meet, not a real meet. So we had a plan to see that there is a tripartite agreement between the Farmers Producers Organization, the Higher Education Institute, with Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education. After identifying the need in IRMA, Sir was there, Samupsa Sarma was there. On March 14th and 15th of 2020, we had a program called as Adhyam, where the representatives of the farmers producers organizations and the students who had conducted a study, research in those farmers producers organizations were on the same platform. We tried to relate their expectations. We tried to understand the expectations of each other, where we wanted to see that the rural area flourishes, the rural area gets developed with the help of the professional help that is extended by the students of Premier Institute. There was a lot of mismatch in between the expectations of the farmers producers organization and the expectations of the students of Premier Institute. Now, leaving that apart, what the professional help needed from the farmers producers organization, it was in terms of strengthening the organization structure of a farmers producers organization. Already there are 7,500 plus farmers producers organizations are there, of which around 3,500 are working profitably, viably, and other 4,000 are either defunct or not working properly. So with that, the central government has also come out with a plan of establishing another 10,000 farmers producers companies under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So suppose if you calculate the higher education institutes across the country, as told by our sir Jyoti Nanjan sir, there are around 5,400 management institutes, and 5,400 management institute extending the professional help towards the farmers producers organization by asking them to consider the student as an intern. So there is a two-way exchange between the farmers producers companies as well as higher education institutions. So we are making the student to learn skills that are required to become an entrepreneur. So here I use three shifts that your students will undergo. The first thing is the internship. So during this internship, whatever the knowledge that is gained within the four walls is converted into skills when he visits the organization by his observation that he makes during this internship. The knowledge is converted into skills, either managing money, managing manpower, managing technology, managing machine, managing method, managing market, whatever the managing skills that are needed for a manager are sharpened during this internship. So after this internship, after completion of either PGDM or whatever program that is there, so he will enter into the second shift, which is called as apprenticeship. Jitendra Singh ji, please, Jitendra Pal Singh ji, please mute, or I request the system admin to do that. Thank you. So here the student enters into the second shift where it is called as apprenticeship. So during internships, he works, comes out with a project report for himself as well as for the institution. So there is a sharing of knowledge through the faculty members to the institution for the student. In the second phase, when we call it as apprenticeship, he starts earning some livelihood by contributing towards the development of the organization. So during this apprenticeship, whatever the skills he has to sharpen that skills. Whether he is proficient in marketing, whether he has got edge in human resource management, or whether he is very good in his technology, that skills should be sharpened during this apprenticeship. And then he moves towards the third shift, which is called as entrepreneurship. So we keep telling that the students should be standing on their own legs, and they should come out with a lot of entrepreneur vision, and entrepreneurship is possible. A lot of opportunities are extended from central government of India. Yes, there are opportunities. But how do you make one stand on his or her own legs? Is to make him an entrepreneur. Tata, Birla, Adani, Ambani, we keep taking a lot of names, but nobody has started a multinational in the first go. It has started, they might have started with 3-4 people around, and they have grown big. Same thing is being done through Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education. We have done almost 600 plus such workshops across the country. And in these workshops, we have contacted more than 9,000 plus faculty members, and we have formed around 2,075 rural entrepreneurship development cells. This is the right figure that I'm giving in front of you. In each cell, rural entrepreneurship development cells, there are 6 faculty members, including the principal or the head of the department. And 6 into 2,075, we have already created the network of 12,000 plus professionals. Each faculty member is either proficient in marketing or in human resource or in technology or in market, different streams that are there. So with that, if suppose we have the faculty members over here and the students who are over here in this workshop, if I just request you to do some introspection, self-introspection. Let us, हम लोग हमारे अंदर थोड़ा झांक के देख लेंगे, are we the professionals? When I say professional, it is to be supported with a job. मैं बोल रहा हूँ, मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, मैं लेक्चर दे रहा हूँ, मैं लेक्चरर हूँ, लेक्चर देना मेरा जॉब है, it is giving me livelihood, but am I doing the right thing as a professional? So you go to a footpath workshop where you call a professional mechanic. He might not be literate. He might not be carrying a certificate of post-graduation or whatever that is there. No piece of paper, just the skills. You see the way the professional help is extended to the needy one. My vehicle is broken. It needs some repair. So when I go to him, he extends professional help where we can recollect. It is not only the theory that is there, but it is the training that has been imparted from his group. When the training takes place, then the job comes into picture, and then only he or she will be called as a professional. Unless my job yields me a rightly earned ethical earning, it is not a profession. So here, my friends, we are the so-called faculty members, lecturers, teachers, associate professors, whatever designation that we are. We are in the most noble profession in the world. We are called as Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha. We are in the most noble profession in the world. The students come to seek some right paths from us. So it is our responsibility to show them the right paths. And in Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education, we are doing that. How we are doing that is to see that whatever the student who comes to us, we try to create a desire in that student. So what is that desire? Whether he wants to become a financial manager, he wants to become an entrepreneur, he wants to become a social entrepreneur, he wants to do some social service to the country. So we identify that desire and we are trying to create that desire in the society. So how can be created? Just to identify, talk to the student and ask for his likes, dislikes, inclination towards doing something. You will come to know that this is what the student wants to become. Now, is it right just to create the desire and give it to the student? No. There has to be an appropriate design that has to be created to reach that desire or to achieve that desire. So what is that design? It doesn't start at the post-graduation level. It doesn't start at the primary school level. There are different stages that comes in between achieving this desire and planning this desire. Suppose if I take an example of a doctor who wants to become pediatrician, a doctor who wants to become orthopedician. Suddenly, just by getting the desire, I cannot become a pediatrician. There has to be a design from the preliminary school, primary school, high school, and in 10th standard, the student should get highest marks. Then 10 plus 2 or intermediate or pre-university, again the student should get the required marks to join MBBS, Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery. And after completion of MBBS, then he or she can go to the specialization of orthopedics or pediatrician. Then his desire will be met to see that I become a professional. So is that thing happening in our education system? So the next question Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam came out was by telling that in every higher education system, forget about the other, whatever the happened has happened, we need not do postmortem. There is no need to do the postmortem also. Unnecessarily, we will be wasting our time. What has happened. So further to that, if we add this value-based value educational system, the value system is added in higher education institutes, what will happen? So we are making the students responsible. We are making them understand the value of the parents. We are making them understand the value for the teachers who are showing them the right path. We are asking them to understand the value of the mother nature environment, which we keep spoiling, which keep polluting, we keep adulterating. And we make them understand the value of the beautiful Ramarajya or society that is around them, which is giving them a lot of confidence, which is nurturing them, which is molding them according to the requirement, and which ensures that he or she becomes a responsible citizen. So, my friends, the path ahead is very lucrative. The people around us are very broad-minded, very big-hearted. Just because of COVID-19, some loss might have happened, but that always can be recovered. So with that, when I see the rural economy that is in front of me, I see around 20,000 farmers, producers, companies which are coming ahead. which are being registered under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. There are a lot of opportunities. As Sir said, Shambhu Prasad said, there are a lot of opportunities. Like a cluster of villages can have a warehouse. A cluster of villages can have a logistics support through cold storage. A cluster of houses can have a processing unit. Say, for example, Maharashtra, we have a lot of sugarcane that is grown. In Odisha, I have visited the taste of the vegetable that is there in Odisha is not there in any part of the country. I have traveled across the country. Whatever the fish or whatever the vegetables that I have tasted should be made available to the people of other part of the country also. So how is it is possible is through appropriate logistics. For appropriate logistics, we need to have a supply chain. For supply chain, if you understand the links between the producer and the consumer, there are a lot of links which are to be strengthened. We also need people to strengthen the market linkages, which is being done by the central government. Already more than 1.5 lakh villages have been connected through the optic fiber cable, and another 5 lakh plus are being connected within 2023. And if you see the vision of the government as well as the vision of Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education, we are also having all the plans to see that whatever the farmers, producers, organizations that get registered will start getting professional help through the higher education institute. Either the student of ASBM University or the faculty member of the university will be in touch, will be on a common platform where the representatives of the farmers, producers, organizations come for the professional help. There is an exchange of idea, exchange of experiences, exchange of knowledge that happens between the representative of FPO and the faculty member and the student. So with that, we see a Ramarajya that is there in front of us. It might not take more than 3 to 5 years if everything goes well. And I thank for the opportunity that has been extended by ASBM University. I especially thank Manmatra Samantresal and Jyotirandan sir also. I think I have taken more time than what was given to me. I could not stop it. With that, I conclude my speech. Let us have any queries, clarifications at the end of the webinar after our friend completes his talk. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shambhu Prasad, for so nicely putting things in the correct perspective. You had rightly pointed out rural well-being leads to want to see the real India, go to the villages. Okay, and then it's true that along with logistics and other support, supply chain strengthening, you need to motivate, you need to somehow persuade the young minds to get into the rural management fold and not focus on only concentrate in the urban, the alluring market. You are rightly pointed out, and your suggestions are really very informative. Thank you so much, Professor Shambhu Prasad. Now we go on to Professor Partha Pratim Sahu, who has a rich experience working for the rural entrepreneurship development and also organizing various skilling programs for the specifically rural youths in the NIRD and PR Hyderabad. NIRD PR, as I understand, I have, and where they give exposure to the young, rural entrepreneurs, come up, learn, teach, and go back and establish their own enterprise in their own villages. So now I request Professor Partha Pratim Sahu to please share his thoughts and experiences.
Thank you, Professor Mahanti. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very clearly, very clearly.
Okay. So, respected Professor Shambhu Prasad sir, Professor Chitalkar, Professor Mahanti, faculty from this ASBM University and other participants. I first thank Professor Mahanti for this opportunity, and as he has hinted, I will try to focus a little bit more on entrepreneurship. So let me start with a quote by Vladimir Lenin, who says that there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks when or where decades happen. So we are passing through a time, like within a very short span of time, we have seen a lot of changes in our economy, in our society, because of this pandemic and pandemic-led lockdown. But let me flag few very basic question when the topic of professional management and skill support for the rural economy that we are trying to discuss. So what type and nature of professional and management skill support required, and for which sector of the economy we are going to address, or which sector we are trying to look at. Then are we going to talk about repairing services or some long lasting improvement in that specific sector, be it agriculture, manufacturing, or services sector? So professional and management skill for whom? The large number of agents, agencies, institutions which are working in the rural landscape. So whom are we referring to? And how, the important question is also to ask, how do we assess the effectiveness of these professional and management skill support programs, which are run by training institutes, universities, and many other organizations are like that. But to my opinion, if we are talking about this professional management and skill support for the rural economy as a whole, so the larger goal should be to create an enabling environment or an ecosystem which will help different agents or institutions to assess, to understand the diverse scenarios, because of this pandemic and pandemic like lockdown, we'll have very diverse possibilities, scenarios. So we need that skill to understand, to assess, and also design corresponding coping strategies or adaptability measures. And in this critical time, it is also very important that our professional management and skill support should create an enabling environment that the implementation of various programs, be it related to Ministry of Rural Development or any other program, that should be implemented properly. So I think whenever we are talking about this professional management and skill support for the rural economy, it should address the larger question or larger issue of creating an enabling environment or an ecosystem towards sustainable rural development, which has been in a issue since many, many years. And this sustainability, concern for sustainability, is even more important at this critical juncture that we are now passing through. And if you will see, there is not much discussion or engagement is going on how rural economy has been impacted by this pandemic and pandemic-led lockdown, because the pandemic, the COVID started in big metro cities and later is uh, it has gone to rural area and all that. The kind of media attention that should go, that should the rural economy should get, it has not got, to my opinion. So we had seen a rural economy distress and agrarian crisis even before this pandemic. And this rural economic crisis and economic distress has further accentuated, further aggravated because of this pandemic and pandemic-led intense and prolonged lockdown. And how long this lockdown will continue, when we will have a normal time, it's all question. But the bigger issues that we have been facing now is that the disappearance of livelihood avenues and options in rural areas. And we have seen exceedingly high rate of youth, and especially youth and educated unemployment in recent years. Those who are following CMIE figures, they can easily see the kind of job challenge that we are facing now. And besides that, we are also facing with declining female participation rate and a large proportion of disengaged idle youth, which we called youth in the need category, not in employment, education, and training. So, and these features, these characteristics are accentuating because of this pandemic and pandemic-led lockdown. And surprisingly, there is no dearth of fund, there is no dearth of scheme so far as the rural area is concerned. Think of any problem in rural area, you will have a corresponding scheme on policy. But most of these policies and schemes are obsessed with subsistence livelihood. And we focus very little on how to graduate, how to scale up, and how to improve this subsistence livelihood avenues or options we have. But as Professor Prasad had mentioned, that this pandemic has also taught us or reiterated the importance of family, the importance of local institutions, the importance of local economy. And in spite of not having professional support on skill, these people have come up with different adaptability and coping strategies. And this Panchayati Raj institutions, very often they are termed as the last mile institutions, but I would say they are first mile institutions. They have run quarantine center, they have arranged food for the those who are suffering. They are also maintaining peace. They are also dealing with the health issues, everything. And in this pandemic time, the women-led household and women-led enterprises, in fact, they have emerged as a very important safety net for the family. And these are very important changes that one should highlight when we talk about rural economy in the present context. Reverse migration has taken place. It is both an opportunity and also a challenge. A vast bulk of educated, skills, youth or not so youth also have come back to rural areas. So we should try to see how we can exploit their skill and expertise and engage them to the in building of the rural economy, the rebuilding the rural economy or reviving the rural economy. So for me, the larger question will be how can we smoothen the income and consumption expenditure curve of this poor family or family who suffered because of this pandemic and pandemic-led lockdown. I would like to put this whole issue of professional management and skill support for the rural economy on or from the empowerment lens. So what kind of professional and management skill support needed for the economy, which will empower, which will lead to three different types of empowerment: economic empowerment, digital empowerment, and institutional empowerment. And some of these points are in fact touched upon by the previous two speakers also. So far as this economic empowerment is concerned, how can we create more and more livelihood either through entrepreneurship opportunities? How can we diversify the livelihood portfolios of the rural households? How can we scale up, graduate existing livelihood avenues, and also create an ecosystem that more and more startup or entrepreneurial opportunities, self-employment ventures will come up. But our focus should be that sustainability and scale up, graduating, and it should also be inclusive, so that if from this economic empowerment, it should be ensured that all sections of the society are being served or getting the opportunities. And the second empowerment theme or the vertical is digital. And I know even now rural area has got the problem of inadequate internet facility, the required skill and fund to go for digital empowerment. But still, I would say it is necessary but not sufficient. So technology-based innovative solutions, this data-driven decision-making and development, skill to use smart technology, make smart decisions, greater connectivity to access various services to achieve high standard of living and inclusive development of all sections of the society will be very crucial. And attempts should be made to moderate the digital divide that we have. A large part of the rural area are still untouched by any this digital accessories or technology or internet and all that. And the last one, briefly touched by Professor Prasad, is the institutional empowerment or empowerment of the institution. How can we strengthen the village communities, the rural institutions, and how can we engage more and more with the Gram Panchayat and the various stakeholders who are operating in the rural landscape. And I think many of you must be aware of the institutional platform or pedestal Gram Panchayat development plan, which is now key. Any activity which want to initiate in a rural landscape, it should pass through Gram Sabha and GPDP. So how can we strengthen this Gram Panchayat development plan and the kind of support needed to Gram Panchayat officials, Gram Panchayat functionaries, and in this context, the kind of professional management and skill support, I think, will be very important. What kind of professional management skill needed, which will lead to strengthening of this Gram Sabha, strengthening of the local institutions, and strengthening of this GPDP. As Professor Mahanti, in fact, had called me in the morning and focused little bit more on enterprise, because I am working in the Center for Enterprise Development and Financial Inclusion. So let me briefly touch upon the enterprise development issues or sustainable rural enterprise development issue, which could be a key strategy to rebuild the rural economy in this critical time that we are passing through. So the first step will be to have a mapping exercise, identify the micro, small, medium enterprises, and also self-help group which are operating in a rural area, or let's say a Gram Panchayat or a cluster of Gram Panchayat. The second step is to think of or prepare a vulnerability assessment framework, because during this pandemic and lockdown period, different units have they have faced different kind of constraints. So unless we know, unless we understand, unless we assess the type and magnitude of constant that they have faced, we will not be able to help them, or we will not be able to provide the kind of support they need. So, and in this particular time, it is also important to improve the credit worthiness of the small businesses. And what is also needed is to help prepare these small units or SHG to prepare a business continuity plan, how they will reactivate their business, how they will regain their pre-COVID status, and how again after some time they will expand their business or they will grow their business. Towards this objective, and following things will be very important. Some of the points have already been spoken, so I will not repeat. Access to shared services like common facility center, farmer producer group, and even the self-help group. So the time has come that the self-help group should operate to scale up as a productive enterprise and create employment opportunities at the local level. Now, if you will see, most of these self-help group are operating at subsistence level, and most of them are, you can call it, not sustainable. And one new thing that has come up in recent time is that platformization. A lot of services, schemes, and programs are now being provided in IT-enabled portals and on single window. So how can we digitally empower small units, micro units, and SHG so that they can access the benefit of this platformization? There are all kinds of IT-enabled portals are being created by Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of MSME to help these small rural enterprises. But even now, if you will go around in rural area, either they are not aware of, or even if they are aware of, they are not able to access. So in this situation, the long-term and continuous mentoring and handholding support is also going to be very crucial. So we have got institutions, agencies like RCT, MSME DIs, MSME Technology Center, ITIs, and so many. So those institutions, agencies should now pitch in and provide this kind of mentoring and handholding support, which is, I think, very crucial at this critical juncture. And so far as the training and capacity development deficit, which was uh, talked about by Professor Prasad, and most of the training and capacity development programs are now delivered or transacted on a multiple dose basis. So can we think of some training and capacity development programs which can be delivered on combo basis? So the time has come that in one training program you will get a bit of business, a bit of finance, a bit of other things, so many other things. And the last thing will be to empower local institutions in this pandemic time. In fact, they have played a very crucial role, very decisive role, and the kind of professional management support and skill that we are talking about, that should empower the local institutions like Gram Panchayat and many other agencies and stakeholders who are operating in the rural landscape. Many NGOs are working. We have got SRLM, we have got many CSR activity affiliates are also working. So they should come together now. The partnership of local institutions with other stakeholders is going to be the key if at all we are trying to revive and rebuild the rural economy. So I will close the professional management and skill support, and we are creating a cadre of rural managers. We have got management programs, and now we have also seen programs to promote women entrepreneurship by Access Livelihood. They call it mini MBA. Then we have got organization Deshpande the Desi MBA in some part of the Maharashtra. So there are all kinds of management programs which are being going on. The professionals that we are creating with this process, the most important thing that they should learn is to understand the other. Other means those who are marginalized like communities like scheduled castes and scheduled tribe. So if we can understand other from their perspective, that will be the critical step in reducing the kind of conflicts that we see in rural area, the kind of inequality that we have seen in the rural area and all that. And in this professional management skill and training program, and we have to now include this empathy training, mindfulness training, compassion training, and critical inquiry training. And on this area, this UNESCO's Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development, they are working in this direction. So those who are interested, they can see. And towards the end, I will say that we have to also promote social dialogue in the rural landscape. Now, I don't see the kind of engagement or dialogue, debate that is going on. Whatever going on, I can call it a monologue. So in rural area, if we would like to see or develop this kind of professional management skill that we are talking about, we also have to promote social dialogue in the rural landscape. And finally, as Professor Chitalkar was mentioning, the time has come to prepare rural people into global citizens who will understand not only the local issues, but also the global issues also. So with this, let me end. And if there is any question, comments and observation, I will be happy to respond. Now back to Professor Mahanti. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Professor Parthapratim Sahu. You have touched upon so many areas, and actually we would have liked to go on and listening to you with your so much of experience and different points. Basically, what you are suggesting is, connecting the dots. See, things are in place, but then there is something missing between, linking them up. And most important point, 2 to 3 major points which you have highlighted. I would like to just repeat those for the listeners, participants. Yes, we need to create an enabling environment, which is most important for the rural economy. And more importantly, we have to assess the rural economy, how is, and then go for some sort of tools, and using those tools you have suggested, like mapping exercises, prepare a vulnerability index and all those, and also utilize the idle manpower, or rather particularly more so idle youth who are becoming liability for themselves as well for the economy as a whole. Now all these requires, as you rightly pointed out, strengthening the grassroots level institutions, including PRIs, and particularly the PRI at the bottom, that is Gram Panchayat level. And many more things you had pointed out. All these actually are required, and who is to deliver them? Obviously, a need for a professional management team. Okay, thank you, sir, Professor Parthapatim Sahu. And before I go to the end, there is a few, not few, actually one question by, I would like Professor Parthapatim Sahu to take this question because it is directed to you by Guru Prasad Das. He is asking my question to Parthapatim sir. What type of skills that are adopted initially to make sustainable rural India much more successful?
In fact, there is no one skill that will serve the requirement or the kind of need that we are now facing. So I am not proposing any new skill program, or what is important is to deliver these skill programs or capacity development programs, which is now delivered at a multiple dose basis rather than in combo. So, and in this process, we waste resources and we waste time also. And
also duplication.
yeah, so many duplicacies. Same person is getting skill from ITIs and also from different schemes and programs. So we have to think some combo measure one, and as someone has correctly said, that reskilling, upskilling, and refresher skilling will also be more crucial than only skilling. And in rural area, we have got artisans and so many entrepreneurs who are excellent preparing excellent handicrafts. So for them, this recognition of prior learning is also important. Thank you.
Okay. Now I don't see any other questions worth putting. So, but because I am quite tempted to ask you one or two questions before we go to the end. Do you feel any policy changes that are necessary to make these professionals moving into rural area rather than inclination towards the urban setups? They like to get into, after MBA, they like to get into the corporate houses, which pay them quite handsomely. But then, is there anything that is required in the policy level to make these jobs in the rural market more attractive enough for people to take up into rural management courses? Any of the panelists can take my, if Professor Sambhu Prasad is there, he can also take me question also.
Yeah, I think public investment in in education, especially in rural areas, hasn't come up as much as it possibly should. The opportunities, I think Dr. Chetan might have much more to share on this, on the work that they're doing. But essentially, I think the big shift should happen. As I said, we need to look beyond these startups and other things and empower local rural enterprises to grow. And I think there's a lot that's happening in this space in a few pilots. Learning from evidence on the ground is the most critical thing. I think the biggest challenge in policy circles today is the inability to listen to people. I think if that alone can change, the rest will follow. We are just having too much of centralization of decision making, a bit of decentralization, and opening up people's spaces for people to try experiments. The same kind of startup culture that's there at the at the national kind of level in big metros needs to move towards the local areas. Ease of doing business in rural India is a very important element. It's still very difficult to get certain kinds of licenses and so on. For example, in the case of FPOs, if these women who are, a board of directors sitting in some remote part of the country, they are to do the same kind of compliance as the Tatas, Birlas, and Ambanis do. We are not going to make 10,000 FPOs with this kind of policy environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sambhu Prasad. Anything, Professor Cheetal Pitakar, you would like to add to what Professor Sambhu had said, to the very same question, which you can share out of your own experience? Professor Cheetal? Hello.
Thank you, sir. After moving through around 1,000 villages across the country, You can take the horse towards water where water is there, but you cannot make it drink. So as rightly said by Sir, the younger generation is idle, and they don't have respect for their parents, they don't have respect for the land, they don't have respect for the profession. And at this juncture of time, there are a lot of issues which are being faced by either IRMA or Mahatma Gandhi National Council of Rural Education or NIRD in that matter. So we can get the students for training. We can see that the policies are or the rules or regulations are implemented properly. But after that, what? So wherever there is a need, we have seen even in urban areas, in tier 2, tier 3 cities also, if you are hungry, you will certainly look for a job. If you are hungry, you will try to do something legal. And we have one more person in for India who is called as Mandi Prasad. one by 12 Mandi Prasad. वो बोलता है बेचो बेचो और बेच के सीखो, कुछ भी बेचो और सीखने के बाद बिफोर गोइंग आउट ऑफ द इंस्टीट्यूशन ओनली यू स्टार्ट respecting the money that you have earned.
Right.
See, we are nurturing, we are pampering, we are taking care of our children in such a way that they are hesitating to do their own job. If I say there is a post in my apartment, I need around 50 painters. I'm going to pay you 1,000 rupees. So how many of our students will be coming for that job? If I say I have 4 or 5 dry clean shops that is a need of the hour, and I want these people to come and open dry clean shops. If I say in a cluster of villages, we are coming out with the cold storage and we want the transportation facility, I want some student to come out with facilitating that. How many of them will come? Now there is a dearth of the toilet cleaners also. I am doing my own toilet cleaning. If I call somebody, he asks 1,000 rupees per week. Paying 1,000 rupees is not a big worry. But doing the job is. Why are we thinking that doing this job is inferior? Why there is something called as bad impression on dignity of labor over here? You go to United States of America, you go and work as a hotel cleaner there. When you are doing your PhD, when you are doing your MS, you will be a cashier or you will be a petrol pump vendor, petrol vendor in a petrol pump. You will clean the houses. You go for housekeeping activities. But why don't you do in your own country? So is it the rule that our Manu has come out with? The Kshatriya should protect and the Brahmin should share his knowledge. Shudra should clean the city and the Vaishya should do the business. So there was nothing like that. It was the misconception that our 70 years of ruling that has gone into our mind, and there is a blockage of mind. If I do this, then I'm a software engineer. Yeah, I'm a very good profession. And if the same software engineer is selling tea in many of the countries, earning more than 1.5 to 2 lakh rupees, is it a bad profession? No. At least he is peaceful. There is no stress. There are a lot of Shambhu Sarma knows we have a lot of video clippings where the software engineers have come down to class 1, class 2 or tier 1, tier 2 cities and have started tea stalls. And many of the people have started consultancy services for the small scale or the startups. We can do anything, but only thing is that they should not be made hungry. If you are hungry, then you will search for the food. What we are doing is we are not making the student hungry. We are not making our children hungry. We want to feed them and we want to pamper them and see that all the bad values that are there are created, pushed into the minds of the students. And to get rid of the perceptions, it is very difficult.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Before we conclude, I would like to conclude by, with a sincere thank you to the panelists who have accepted my request in spite of their busy schedule, and also the participants, and of course, the management of ASBM University. I thank our founder president, ASBM University, eminent academician, Professor Vishwadip Patnaik sir, for his encouragement and constant support for academic initiative, including all the academic initiatives, in fact, including the webinars. I thank Professor Kalyan Sankar Ray, Vice Chancellor, ASBM University, for his guidance in finalizing the theme and title of the webinar, and also the advice he was rendering to me from the end to end. I also thank Professor Falgu Niranjana, Pro Vice Chancellor, ASBM University, for her advice and guidance, repeatedly. I thank all participants for remaining in contact with us so long and listening to us, our panelists. I'm sure they must have, gone back, richer. Last but not the least, I would like to thank my technical team webinar for their help and support, which they have extended. Without their support, it would not have been possible to conduct this webinar. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you all.
Hello.
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 Hello. Hello.
Sir, heartiest congratulations for organizing very knowledgeable and informative webinar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. May I know your identity, please?
I am Dr. Sachin Aloni from Wardha, Maharashtra.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your good words.
Most welcome, sir. Most welcome. Sir,
Thank you.
it's possible for you to send me the feedback link on my mail ID?
I'll see. In case possible, I'll do that. Please send
Okay,
us a mail. Okay.
Because last time I am unable to fill the feedback form due to
I'll try to.
not receiving feedback link on my mail. Okay. Thank you, sir, for your kind cooperation.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Jyoti Ranjan, sir. Jitendra Pal Singh, Shambhu Prasad, sir. Everybody who is there in this workshop, thank you very much. We'll meet once again. As soon as the lockdown is over, we will see each other personally.
No, I'll say that this is just the beginning. We'll have a long relationship, sir. We have a lot of things to, learn from you, and we'll be having a long relationship, sir. Thank you so much for your, kind words, and also
Thank
the
you,
time
sir.
you have devoted. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.